Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another week beyond the trailer park. First of all, sorry about last week, but we were all just really wore out and we didn't have anything really planned. So we just kind of said, we're just going to take the week off. So our apologies for that, but here we are. And I was up to my eyeballs in preparing for my first talk that I was asked to give. So I was I wanted to spend a bit of time on that as well. So last week I got to go to the secular Central Ontario Humanist Association up in Barrie, and they asked me to give a talk. So that was a lot of fun. Some great folks there I got to meet, and some good questions. And we even had a couple of Christians come who were quite happy to engage us in a debate, scare quotes, afterwards, which was boiled down to how on earth could you be an atheist and where the heck do you get your morals from?
Oh, Jesus.
Because that's original. Never heard that one before. You're muted still, Morgan, by the way. But yeah, I mean, really nice guy and all, but was just absolutely floored that we don't believe in evil and stuff like that, and that we could possibly get morality on our own. Well, that's moral relativism. Yeah, because that's all we have is moral relativism. But don't you need an objective source? No.
He's not fucking objective.
I'm like, where's your objective source? Because, God changes his mind, and besides, it's his opinion, therefore it's not objective. But anyway.
Yeah,
I love...
By the way.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't, but that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. But yeah, what was that, Morgan?
I was going to say, I love how they act like if there's moral relativism will just lead to like anarchy and chaos and people like murdering each other in the streets. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Why is that the first place your mind goes? Like that tells me something about you.
Yeah. And it's like they think moral relativism is bad, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to base my morals or my ethics on a book that was written over 2,000 years ago.
Or someone else's opinion. How about I base it on what I think and not what someone else tells me to think? Because that's when someone else tells you what's moral, that's when you end up thinking it's a good idea.
Like Jillian.
Yes. Or, people who think it's a good idea to send their children to heaven.
That too. Well, and I know I've said this before. It's like the Arnrar meme where he says,
no, Penn Jillette.
Thank you, Penn Jillette. Talking about how many times he's thought about raping and murdering people, and it's like 0.
I've raped and killed everyone I've ever wanted to, and that number is 0. Yes. And if your number is not 0, we have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it just. Yeah. I'm always baffled by that so original thought of where do you get your morals from? It just blows my mind. I mean, it's like,
and it was funny because my talk is it was the same one I did for Atheists of Facebook a couple of years ago. I tweaked it a bit for current events and whatnot, but it discusses tribalism and conformity and where tribalism came from, why it used to be beneficial and why it's not anymore, and we don't need to be that way. And it was kind of funny because he didn't have much of anything to say when we had like a discussion right after the presentation. But then as we were packing up, that's when he was like, couldn't wait to talk to me and, throw me his genius challenge, I guess. but it's like, okay, first of all, we've heard this one a million times, and yeah, you're just not original. I mean, nice guy, but yeah. And the funny part was too, there was about 5 or 6 of us that stayed around to talk to the guy. And finally, because the room that we were using, so there's a grocery chain here. Well, the parent company is called Loblaws. They own a bunch of different brands, but their stores generally have community rooms in them, which is really cool. So they have rooms that are equipped to teach cooking as well. So we were in one of these cooking school rooms. So it had like a full kitchen with the big mirror so you could see what was on the stove and whatever. But it was inside the grocery store. So obviously when the grocery store closed at 10, everybody had to be out. And so we had about an hour and 45 minutes drive home. So it was like probably 9:45 when we left. We had enough time to grab some cream at the grocery store before we left, but the other people were still there when we left. And one of the group members, like the board members that picked me up at the bus station, I pinged him the next day. I was like, how long did Buddy stay there? And he goes, I don't know, I left at 10 and he was still there. So he was determined, that's for sure.
Well, and that's the thing that baffles me, is that, put it bluntly, he obviously lost, but yet they still have to get the last word in, like they have something profound to say. And it's like, I always say, there is nothing new in apologetics.
Nope. His big thing was to act all shocked when we were like, yeah, there's moral relativism, and no, there's no such thing as evil. Like, how can you say there's no such thing as evil? I'm like, it's a descriptor. It's not an anthropomorphized thing.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting
entity. It's an adjective. Something can be described as evil, but I don't believe that there are people who are evil. I believe there are people that have serious problems and who don't have like not having the ability to have empathy is a problem, because that's how we get sociopaths and psychopaths. And those are dangerous people, definitely. But I don't think they're evil. I just think that they have issues understanding and relating to social situations, and understanding that they aren't the only people that get affected.
Yeah,
that's all. And or sometimes they intellectually understand it, but they don't have that capacity to feel the same way that some people do. And it's not even necessarily their fault, but they're dangerous, so we have to deal with them because they're dangerous, but they're not evil.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was amusing, to say the least. But no, the talk went well, and I enjoyed it, and I think people enjoyed it. So yeah, hopefully I get to do more. They want me to come back and do another talk at some point, but yeah, that would mean writing something new. So I have to consider that, because this one, all I had to do was go through and update like some stuff because things had changed since I wrote it. But
yeah,
other than that, yeah. So if anybody's curious as to what that is, over on there is a channel on YouTube called Atheists of Facebook, and it's my original version is recorded on there, so you can. It's virtually the same slideshow and everything. It's just recorded here as opposed to me saying it live. Oh, hey, and over there in the chat we got Nicola. Hey, dude. And Chaos Theory, who is wondering why Beth is using a stick of butter on her microphone.
Well, I get hungry when I use these headphones on my old computer. I guess when right after my stroke, I had troubles with P's and S's, and it came through with a horrible hiss. And I couldn't get one of the real pop filters without having to go through Amazon and all that malarkey, and I couldn't deal with it. So someone said just stick some foam on the end, so I did.
It's a homemade pop filter, basically, Chaos. I'm surprised your cat hasn't eaten it off yet, though.
Actually, he's been really good. I mean, he actually lets me pet him now without biting. He still bites. Well, my one coworker who comes up and visits and has known Zorro since he was a baby, because I got it from her mom, and she came in the apartment, and Zorro hears Dave and Marlene coming up the stairs and stuff like that, so and knows their walk, so he'll sit by the door, and he loves people, but he hates being patted. Well, he let her pat him.
Aww.
So,
yeah, no, he didn't like me very much because I'm a cat cuddler, and I was like, "You're gonna cuddle me."
He's
like, "Fuck you, I'm not."
I mean, he loves people. He loves the attention, and he's pretty good a majority of the time. But I think because he didn't grow up with any litter mates, he never learned that biting hurts.
Yep. So we have Lamb and Tuna saying, so y'all telling me that Charles Manson wasn't evil? Yes, I am. Fucked up in the head, absolutely, but evil, no.
Well, it goes back to what you said, anthropomorphizing evil as a thing, as an entity.
It's not. It's just a descriptor.
Yeah.
Like what he did could be described as evil, but
yeah, I believe that what he did was evil, and I believe that there's a lot of evil parts of him, but I don't believe that there's like this entity of evil or this Satan devil made him do it kind of thing.
Yeah, or that somebody is born evil or can be possessed by evil or any of that kind of.
You choose to do your own actions.
Well, exactly. It's like you said. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a spate of parents, primarily women, who felt their children were possessed, did exorcisms on said children, and fucking killed them.
Well, there was one. I just read a story about that maybe a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, this is what happens when you make evil out to be something more than a descriptor. Yes. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, yeah, what Charlie Manson did, what David Koresh did, what Jim Jones did, what, any cult leader.
Or serial killer or whatever.
Yeah, anybody. I mean, it's not so much that they are evil. Their acts can be described as evil. Absolutely. They have, and I would say probably in most cases, a mental disorder of some kind or a personality trait that is malformed.
I mean, like even a physical ailment where their brain doesn't allow them to feel things properly. So they aren't capable of having empathy and understanding what harm does to other people. Like they wouldn't understand how someone dying would affect other people because seriously, like I know it sounds cliche, but go watch Dexter. They actually explain it really, really well.
Well, I know for me, one of the issues I have is that, well, I can feel empathy, but like I've lost pets. I recently lost my mom, about 4 years ago. And one of my friends even said to me, you haven't even grieved. I'm like, well, she lived 94 years. I mean, what's to be sad about? You know,
Yeah, she had a good life. She was suffering, and now she's not suffering anymore. And
it's and you know, but I've also had times where, like, when my girlfriend was killed back in college, and that's going back 30 years, it still affects me to this day.
Yeah.
So, you know,
it depends on the circumstances.
Yeah, it's like I've lost pets. Oh well, you know. And people say, "Oh," or I made the mistake of calling a friend's pet your dog. You know, I was kind of being sarcastic, yes. And she's like, "It's not my dog, it's my child." I'm like, "Oh, Jesus fucking Christ!" And I'm not picking on people that.
Yeah, because I mean, I think of them kind of that way, but I also accept that in the greater, you know,
scheme of things,
they're not. But Lamb and Tuna says that's crazy. So if there's no evil, if they legalize murder, then any murderer would be an upstanding citizen. That already happens, dude.
Well, that goes to the whole notion of, why would you want to murder? Why do you need someone outside of yourself, outside of your society, outside of your culture to tell you that killing another person is fucking wrong?
Hey,
you should know that, well, if I kill this productive member of society, I'm going to be ostracized from said society.
And there's also the biggest deterrent of all. If it's okay for you to kill somebody, then it's okay for somebody to kill you. And nobody wants to get killed most of the time. So yeah, this is why I don't trust atheists, they said. What are we doing that's different than other people are already doing? You go to some country, for instance, Saudi Arabia, where they'll chop your head off for being an atheist. I would consider that to be murder, but they don't. So they've already legalized what I would consider murder in that country because that's how they see it. To them, being an atheist is evil, not murder.
Yeah.
So, nah. Anyway, but that's not the topic for this evening, although morality does play into it. What we were actually going to talk about is the missionary tourist industry. And what is that, you ask? Doesn't sound like something you may have heard of before. And I'm not talking about missionaries like Mormons or J-dubs and that are more regulated and have a specific set of rules to follow and all of that. We're talking about, you know, charities and church groups that think it's a great idea to go to, say, sub-Sahara Africa, where there's, you know, a terrible famine going on, and we're gonna save people for Jesus and that kind of stuff, because it sounds good on paper, but oftentimes it's actually really not.
Well, it's like I said in our descriptor for tonight. It's basically putting a condition on the help that they offer, i.e., you need clothes, convert to Jesus and I'll give you a pair of clothes. Or missionaries going into Haiti after the earthquake, and they took ebooks of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay. To a country that at that point in time, their power grid was in disarray due to the quake, if I remember it was a quake, and expected people to accept these electronic devices of the Bible in order to get help. Yeah. It's putting a condition on the help. So if, you know, it would be like, you know, saying, well, if you want this box of food, you got to mow my lawn. No. I give a box of food to people because they need it. Yeah. I don't want anything in return. There cannot be, you know, a caveat. And there was a point in one article that Morgan brought up when we were discussing this earlier in the week. where they say, and this is specifically in Brazil, it says bribery and coerced conversion are part of a larger issue of a long-standing exploitation of indigenous people and their culture and their land. And that's what happened in this country. If you think about it, when, you know, America was discovered, it was the exploitation of the Indians. I mean, to the point now, they are the original inhabitants of this country, and some of them now can't vote.
Mm-hmm.
And this is their fucking country.
Yeah, and it goes in deeper than that too. What I'd like to also explore that it's also not just purely a religion thing.
Right.
Because it is this sort of you'll see people who go over there, and it does, but I do see this on mission trips frequently, and most of these things are tied with mission trips, but there's this whole industry around this exploitation of poor people while making people feel like they're actually doing something.
Yeah.
So, and it goes into a lot of things like, you know, it goes into this race, it goes into race, it goes into this paternalism, it goes into, you know, this colonialist mindset. Because if you think about all these, you know, movies and how Africa is portrayed, and really even how it's just referred to as a continent, you know, because people do it all the time. They're like, oh, Melania Trump went to Africa, and it's like, there's a ton of countries. Can you be
Yeah,
more
what country?
specific? Like, and people just don't care to like even realize that they have individual countries with their own cultures. But
Mm-hmm.
so there's that, and then there's also this whole Instagram kind of culture that sort of arisen around it, such as, you know, taking pictures of suffering children, taking pictures of yourself. And, you know, it's like you don't bother to get to know the names of these kids, or like challenging stereotypes, or actually supporting the work that people there are doing. Not to say that these countries don't have problems. I mean, all countries do. But I don't see these same people who are, say, there's a nurse going over to Uganda or something. I don't see that same nurse like posing with her suffering patients in
Yes.
America. You know,
Well,
so why is it okay for you to do that there?
for
Well,
instance, Doctors Without Borders, right? They go all over the world and help in war zones and whatnot. When do you ever see Doctors Without Borders sending out publicity shots with like, oh, look at this patient that I did surgery on, or you know, you don't see that. But
Yeah.
yet I remember all the damn commercials, and we were talking about this a little bit before, of like there's one here that we used to see all the time, and it was the same guy, and he would go and be like, look at this poor child, and the kid would be all dirty and wearing ragged clothes, and look at how sad she looks because she has no shoes, and this, and I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. Like, why would you let that child suffer one more second to get your fucking video? Like, go over and do something.
yeah.
You know, just
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
or this whole exploitation. It's like this whole thing where it's like, oh, look at these, you know, look at these black and brown people who can't help themselves, so they need us to come in there and be sort of a savior complex that people have. And well, you know, it's instead of going, you know, not saying that there's anything wrong with helping people. I mean, of course, you know, but there's a way to go about it, like understanding the culture and working with people who are there, who are doing work, because they exist.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. We understand that it takes money to do this type of work, whether it's, you know, legitimate, you know, like Doctors Without Borders. Even some of your Christian charity groups, you know, are pretty good with their money. But when you are only giving, for lack of a better word, 50% of what you take in towards building up a culture or a society or a country, or combating famine, or genocide, whatever, when only 50 cents, when there's a group down the street that's doing 95, there's an issue there. And it's like Morgan said, with the what they call it is slum tourism. and this is a quote from one article that we had, was slum tourism sparks considerable debate around an uncomfortable moral dilemma. No matter what you call it, slum tours, reality tours, adventure tourism, poverty tourism, many consider the practice little more than slack-jawed, privileged people gawking at those less fortunate.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes.
And people pay to do this too, which is bananas. Like they'll be like, show us all the poor people, and this practice actually goes back to the 1800s when they would gawk at poor Irish immigrants, and we Irish were like, oh, let's like be dramatic about it, to where like they would hire like actors to act as if they were, to like, punch it up a bit, because they didn't want to disappoint the visitors, so with only a few poor people and and a few tragic things to gawk at. But yeah, this whole idea of like people actually pay money to go and do this, and a lot of times they'll go there and they'll post on Instagram and be like, oh, I'm so fortunate or whatever, and they'll and the basic, it's to maybe they think they're doing something good, but at the end of the day it's to get Instagram likes, and it's gross to exploit people.
It is.
Well, it reminds me of, I don't know, this is maybe 3-4 years ago, and I don't know if this is true, so if it's not, I apologize, but the gist of it was this woman went on a missionary trip of some sorts, I don't know what religion, or if it was not religious, to a country in Africa, I don't remember which one, and she was expecting this, slum people in tattered clothing with no shoes. She got there, she's like, why the fuck am I here? She walks into a modern city.
Yeah.
And it's like,
modern cities there.
Yeah, and it's like, I know when I have friends from Haiti and from Jamaica, and I've never been there, but I do have friends that have been there, and we would joke about, yeah, you don't want to go to XYZ in Haiti or Jamaica. That's the bad part of town, i.e. where all the slums are. They, oh, you need to stay in Port-au-Prince. And my one friend, who was pretty altruistic, she came from money, so, going to that type of district would not bother her, and she would do what she could. She would have no problem giving the shirt off her back. She intentionally went outside of Port-au-Prince to see, how their life was, because that's the way she was. And it's like, a couple of my friends were like totally aghast that she left Port-au-Prince. It's like, no, you only go visit there, Well,
I mean, I feel like that's different from like gawking at them. It's like you're going there to try to get a new perspective, and you're going there respectfully. You're not going there to be like, oh, let me save you or whatever. Right. And I mean, yeah, there is.
Like that.
Can I have a picture of me like giving you a blanket or some shit like that? Like,
well, there was a story too of a woman. I don't think it was missionary work per se, but she had gone to, I don't know what country. I'm going to assume somewhere in Africa, and she gave a child a bottle of water, and she ended up adopting the child.
Yeah,
and it's like, she was like, if I remember correctly, she was like totally flabbergasted. I believe this child was an orphan too. Here's like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child who was obviously malnourished. Now, she had her picture taken, but she also had a after picture of how the child was now after being in her care for a couple years. And it's just like, there's nothing wrong with that. And when you're going, but it's the exploitation, the colonial, like Morgan said, like the exploitation and the colonialism of conquering and fixing the culture, because we're right.
Like, so like, look at where a charity would swoop in and say, well, we're going to build a school and we're going to build a hospital and this and that. It's like, well, that's great. But number one, is that what the community wants? Is that what the community needs? And two, are you going to teach them how to sustain themselves with those things that you're providing? Or are you going to expect that you just have to maintain a presence there forever to, quote, take care of them? Because that's not really helping either, I don't think.
Yeah, that's that paternalistic, like, oh, I have to take care of you because you don't know how to take care of yourself. And there is, I feel like, a responsibility sort of here, because it is a lot of these countries, they have these conditions because of consequences from our foreign policy a lot of the time. And so
America's a good example.
yeah, exactly. And so, or like colonialism and things like that. But the thing is, you have to be careful not to perpetuate that sort of colonialist mindset of like, oh, let me come and convert the people and make them civilized or whatever. And it's just, because I remember one of them, I don't know if we could even probably do a whole episode on this, but what comes to mind is around Christmas time, we'll especially start seeing these ads. That's what made me think about it, because people around here, they're really big into the Operation Christmas Child, which is where, it's Samaritan's Purse does it, which is Franklin Graham's charity. And you could call it that. But so what you do is you take a shoebox or a plastic bin, and then they get you to get these toys. And of course, they have toys for like boys and then toys for girls, because of course a boy can never play with a doll, or girls can't play with race cars or whatever. So they have you pack them and then they distribute them. But the thing a lot of people don't realize, and also they have things like toothbrushes and like some people do toiletries and things like that. But the thing is, they distribute them with this hardcore evangelical literature, basically being like, if you don't convert, you're going to go to hell. Merry Christmas. And then a lot of times, like, these kids don't like these toys are like American toys. So it's like not culturally relevant to them. And another thing is, yeah, and also if there is somebody in that market that's making like local crafts or like handmade toys, like it disrupts that market. I've even seen like some articles where they've talked about that. Um, and then just the coercion of, distributing this sort of literature and being like, oh, look, these nice people, and usually it's like these nice white people gave you this box of stuff, so now you have to love Jesus. And it's
one
awful.
criticism, my mom used to do it when she was alive, and this was long after I became an atheist, so I kind of was like, and one of the criticisms that I had heard concerning these boxes was most of the stuff was sample size. So you're talking a bottle, sample size bottle. So in 1 or 2 uses, it was gone, and that was it. They're right back to where they were before. Instead of teaching them, well, this is how you make soap. This is what it's going to be like when you learn how to make it. They don't follow up. They hand out these boxes, hand out their literature, expect them to convert, and then they don't do any type of follow up to make sure that they can sustain themselves. I mean, yeah, giving out stuff is good, but when it runs out, they're right back to square one, and they have to beg and plead all over again.
Yeah, and then there's a whole tradition, like you gave the example of like shampoo and soap. There's a whole tradition of in African soap making. Like there's actually I use products that are the African soap products. And so it's just, and so it's like you could be supporting these, women particularly who had these businesses. You could be doing these things like such as micro loans, which are really helpful for helping women establish their own businesses. And just this whole thing is like these people, I feel like Franklin Graham does make money from himself personally from perpetuating these stereotypes about these people and being like, oh, well, you have to go there and you have to save them just like Jesus saves us or whatever. And it's just, yeah, it's just awful. It's, instead of showing that like, hey, like, there's modern cities here and there's doctors and lawyers and educated people and there's people on the ground that are making a difference and there's businesses and here's how you can support their businesses. And yeah, instead of doing that, it's this I'm going to distribute this, and I'm going to tell you how you should live.
Yeah.
It's totally ignoring, some people have the opinion that we, as a Western society, not just here in the U.S., but I would not be surprised to find this type of mentality over in Europe and in England.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can't state for sure because I don't know. It's not something.
Well, and let's be honest.
I've seen examples, so yeah, it's a very Western mindset.
Americans learned our colonialist ways from our European ancestors.
That's a good point to bring in because
and schools.
Yes.
I mean, and I just lost my thought. Oh shit. Where is that going with it? But yeah, it's just something that we perpetuate, and like you said, Morgan, I mean, they have a whole slope making business. Why not buy your product from them? So these people make money and are hopefully able to distribute it within their own society. Why bring in Western products that's going to last a day or two or a use or two and then be done with it? It doesn't solve anything. And I would not be surprised that there are some non-religious charities that have the same issue. It's the whole idea. I mean, like, for me personally, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and sometimes Easter, not always, I will find through the churches, primarily who is needy and who may not have the funds to do a proper dinner for the holiday. And for me, the holidays are, a time to get together with family, and it has nothing. There's no religious overtone for me. It's just a family gathering for me. I mean, I like getting together with my friends, but people that are in poverty or below poverty can't do that. So I find a family every year, and I don't think any of them are repeats. I usually take my box to one of the churches and say, hey, here's the stipulation. You give it the whole box. I mean, goes to a family that you think might need it. No strings attached. I don't. A lot of times I don't even say who I am. I just drop the box off and tell them that I don't expect anything in return. In fact, the one pastor I did work with, who's now dead and retired. Well, retired and then died recently. I went through his church, even though I do not agree with their dogma, and they're more extreme in some cases. I said, here, he was an okay guy. I said, here's the box. I want my name. I don't want my name attached to it. You distribute it. And that's what he would do. And he tried to talk me into, publicizing it, so to speak. And I'm like, no, I don't want any, this is for the family. This has nothing to do with me. And I think that gets lost when you start making money, so to speak, on your efforts. And I'm not rich. I'm barely above poverty line. But it's something I have done for going on 20 years now. And I want nothing in return. There's no caveats. There's no, they have to get a job to get this, or so. Yeah, I can see where coming from a secular point of view, where even in the secular world that can happen, where we start to, publicize our efforts. And
it's not that publicizing it is even wrong. It's just there's a way to go about it. And it's like, I feel like there's a way to go about it. So I think another thing is like, just ask yourself, like, especially if you're taking pictures of other people, it's like, well, would I want to be portrayed that way? Like, would I want to be portrayed that way? And do I know these people's names? Am I going to give them a copy of this photo? Like, why am I even here? Why am I doing this? And just, and avoiding these sensitive and vulnerable situations that people are in. You don't want to take pictures of people that are waiting to be treated. I mean, if you're just going to post on your Instagram, I mean, photojournalism, of course, is something completely different, but it's just, if you're just going to post on your Instagram, don't do it.
You're just some college kid that went over there to feel like they're doing something good, and you're taking, like you said, you're taking pictures for Instagram or Facebook or shit like that, is completely different, because you're just doing it for your own I don't
Benefit.
know, benefit.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, like get their permission and add information and context about what's going on, and then post like different pictures along with it, like to that way you're not perpetuating, these stereotypes about people.
Proper blogging on it or something. So
Yeah.
go talk to a person and say, hey, I'm here visiting from wherever, and I would really like to know your story. Is there something that I can tell people about you, because I'm interested in getting information out about it?
Yeah, and that puts a focus on the person and not you, which is
That's
what
right.
I think is the key there is you're putting the focus
Yes.
on like the people there instead of, yourself, where and you're not being like, "Oh, everybody, look at what a good person," or "Look what I'm good a Christian I am," or good whatever. And yeah, this whole yeah, it's just craziness. But I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say I know you going to the school you did when you were in high school. I know when I took classes in college, we actually had to take it as part of our normal curriculum, liberal arts curriculum. We had to take this class on missionary work. And I know I had at one point, I had some of my notes from that class floating around. So I'm doing this by rote memory because I couldn't find them. And basically, one of the things we were taught, besides the Bible so easy a 5-year-old can understand it, was that our goal was not to oh yes, you need to help these people. I mean, yes, that goal was there, but it was not explicitly stated. The goal was you want as many converts as you can get. And I remember, thinking on that, I'm thinking, I thought the goal was to help people.
Yeah, it's kind of what Jesus's whole thing was, but I don't know. Maybe I mean, but again, it's like these people take it and they twist it into something that ultimately harms people.
Yeah. It's just, it's a bizarre thing. And to find out, I mean, I kind of knew it existed. I wasn't positive, and then you sent that one article about the whole industry surrounding it. And it's like
$2 billion a year is the whole volunteerism industry, and that's not even like mission work too. And it's just, and there is that element I feel like with mission work where I remember these kids would like, I remember at French camp, like kids would go to Wales. And I was like, why are you going to Wales? Or like, but I mean, that's not like an area, they weren't like there to like do relief work or anything. It was just there to like start a vacation Bible school. But I found that a little bit weird. But I mean, I know there's like poor people in Wales, but I was like, you live in Choctaw County. That's like the poorest county in Mississippi, which is saying a lot. So it's like there is a ton you can be doing here. And but then, or like another example would be people like going on mission trips to the Bahamas or Belize, and it's like, are you going as a vacation, or are you actually going to uplift these people? And then the missionary work they would do was this sort of exploitation thing where it was like, yes, they're giving people dental care, but let me take a selfie with the brown people and tell them how to live and what to believe in and not uplift their own people there. And it's like, why can't you give them money to go to like dental school, or like donate money to a local dental school they have like there? It's
Help create a scholarship.
yeah, help do that instead of yeah.
That's what always kills me, and I'm gonna warn people that I do have a little bit of a isolationist tendency. I'm not real big on giving foreign aid. I'm not real big on foreign charity work when we have people in our own country struggling.
Well, and the problem is that
it's an issue for me that I'm trying to temper. I'm trying to get a better understanding, but I really like
Well,
what
but
Morgan was
the
saying.
thing is, so having poor people in your own country, the pervasive attitude, well, that's their fault.
Yeah, yeah,
We don't because our country is so rich. If there's a poor person, that just means there's some kind of fuck up. But Africa like legitimately doesn't have food, so that's being generous and doing good if I go help those poor people.
yeah, and that's the issue.
'Cause they don't look like me.
I tried to see beyond, because it's like there's a dichotomy in how people view it, and I struggle with it because I mean I still find myself sliding back to that. Well, we got people we got to take care of here first, but then again, I mean, there's a whole paradigm in there that just it gets all jumbled sometimes, and I don't say the right thing or say the proper thing, and it's just I just have a problem with any type of missionary work outside of our own country when we have children here starving.
Yeah,
Or
see,
I
don't,
just
but
I don't understand it. I don't know how, and especially like the cases you were saying about these vacation missionary works, going to France. Well, it's like Mitt Romney when he was running, people would harp on him. I think it was Mitt Romney. He went on his missionary work to France.
but they're not Mormons, Beth. They're all Catholic.
Yeah, Mormon mission. So Mormon missionaries don't do the kind of quote missionary work we're talking about at all.
Yeah.
All they are supposed to do is go door to door and try and convert people.
Yeah. So
Now,
I mean,
if somebody says, well, like they do always say, we're here living in the neighborhood for like say the next 6 months or something. If you need help with something, we'll be happy to help you. But they're wanting to like come and like mow an old person's lawn or something like that to get in their good graces so that hopefully they can talk them into becoming Mormon. It's not the same at all.
that's actually a good point to make, Dub. I never even thought of that.
Yeah. Morgan froze up, by the way.
Oh.
But she's got a cute smile happening, so that's good. She'll be back.
Yeah, I just find the whole notion, whether it's secular based or whether it's Christian based or whatever religion, with missionary work, because it's like it's to me it's so, it's like, oh, in some cases we can't even help our own people, but yet you're spending, not that it's a bad thing, you're spending all this money and doing all this publicity or PR work, and the kid next door to your church, is fucking walking around in sneakers that are 5 sizes too small.
Yeah. So Templar says, here in the U.S., we have a huge welfare system to help out those in need, not to mention the food banks who give out free food. We have so much surplus food, they throw it in dumpsters every day. Well, but so the surplus food that gets thrown out every day is in grocery stores because they put unrealistic standards on the time frames that food can be sold and consumed. So if they don't want to sell it as a product, then why aren't they just giving it to people instead of throwing it away? Because they won't. I'm sure there's the odd store that does, and that they're getting called out for it more and more all the time. But the vast majority of places that throw out food every day in the United States and Canada, they won't give it to the poor, and they should.
Well, being one that is in the system and on the system, it's also they do put some, I won't say unrealistic, but they do put some harsh standards, which they do have to do. And I think that goes to what you were saying, Deb, is that you have grocery stores now that are discarding food instead of donating it or giving it away.
Because I mean, even if you think about, all of us have probably been told this when we were kids at some point. You finish all the food on your plate because there's kids starving in Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, and I remember I got in trouble for the comeback, then give it to them.
Yeah. So,
Well,
in case you're wondering, Morgan, I was responding to a comment Templar made about how the U.S. has a big welfare system and there's food banks and there's like a huge surplus of food that gets thrown out all the time.
Well, and going to that point, and I mean, Templar has a good point, and I understand where they're coming from, but in regards to our welfare system as a whole, prior to my stroke 4 years ago, I did not qualify, and I know Medicaid is a totally different issue than food deserts and stuff like that, food insecurity. But the day before my stroke, I did not qualify for Medicaid. I made too much money in my state at the time. You basically could not have any income. The day of my stroke, I qualified for Medicaid. You want to know why? Because I wasn't
working anymore. You couldn't work no more.
And I am back to work, and I've gotten through that issue, but I did not qualify for Medicaid until Pennsylvania extended Medicaid. So those issues are very similar to a lot of the other issues with food insecurity. When you make the guidelines so low, and yeah, there are situations where people are bilking the system. I will not deny that. I know people bilking the system, or I think they're bilking the system. But eventually they're going to get caught. One did. They couldn't collect food stamps for 10 years. And the only people penalized, though, were her kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, when you get a society such as ours, where it's in some regards become very unwieldy, there's going to be those gaps. And I think those gaps are where charity should fill in, but they should, as Morgan has rightly said, filled in a proper or a an appropriate way, where you're taking fucking selfies.
So Templar says for business it's probably difficult to make some of these decisions. Where's the line? If you give some food away, why shouldn't they just give it all away? And in brackets, some people will bring this up. But at the end of the day, there's still a business that's supposed to be trying to make money. So the point of, well, if you're going to give some away, you better give it all. That's not going to work.
Also, nobody wants to go to a food bank for food. Like, that's the thing. Like, because a lot of people are embarrassed to even go. Yes. It's not like people are going to be rushing to the food bank to all get free food. Like, that's not a thing. And also, it's kind of a responsibility, because these businesses and stuff, and like you were talking about with Medicaid, Beth, like, people are like Jeff Bezos is making how much money off the backs of all of his workers, and like, so the least we can do is tax the fuck out of them to make sure they're taken care of, because his ass sure ain't paying them. Like, so the only way they will is if we make them. In a lot of cases. And so, yeah, I don't care how much they give to charity, because a lot of the times these charities are, these kinds of things that we're talking about. They just serve to do more exploitation and maybe give them a sandwich every once in a while. So it's just, yeah, you need to think about like these long-term approaches and what really is best for the communities.
Templar says, well, let's be real though, if you're starving and hungry, embarrassment shouldn't stop you from going to a food bank. Well, there shouldn't, and there's reality, and there are people that just won't. And
when you're told that you don't deserve it,
yes,
while you're at work pumping their gas,
yeah,
you're going to be a little hesitant going down to your local food bank.
And what I don't understand is why there's a stigma on things like unemployment, because you pay for that. Like, you have paid into that system to cover your ass if you end up without a job with a, due to no fault of your own. And so for people to be like, wow, you're on unemployment, that's bullshit, because everybody has the right to be on unemployment if they qualify, because
it could happen to them. It could happen to them the next week.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's I mean, it was very sobering when I got sick. It's like, I have always worked. There was a 10-month period when I screwed up my back. I did not. I could not. I could barely walk. But I recovered from that, went right back to work. I probably went back to work too soon. And the last thing on my mind, even though I'm not in the greatest health, I'm getting older, but I never, ever, ever thought I would have to go online and go to a fundie and ask y'all for help to pay my fucking rent.
Yep.
I mean, that to me is just not for me personally, but just to know that there are people who are even worse off than I was, that have to scrounge, literally, and they're working. Yeah. I'm not talking about your lazy couch potatoes that are bilking the system. That's a whole nother issue, and that's, as far as fraud goes, 3 to 7% on our, in the U.S. of our social welfare system. That's where the fraud rate is.
And you know what irks me is the idea that because someone might commit fraud, we should be stingy with people who legitimately need help. I think it's the other way around. I think we should be as generous with people who need help as we can sustain. And if somebody bilks the system, well, we'll punish the fuck out of them when we catch them, but we're not going to punish innocent people for the actions of
and you said a very key word: sustain.
Yes.
We have to determine somehow what we as a society, whether you're here in the US, whether you're in Canada or over in the UK, Ireland, Australia, whatever culture or society you're in, we have to determine as a society what we can do to build up those that are worse off than we are. And when you bring in exploitative charity, groups who just keep feeding into the system, we're never going to be able to do that.
Yeah. Because if there's a whole industry around having poor people to show off to other people, then what incentive is there to help them not be poor people anymore?
Well, it's just like the freak shows back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Too, so if anybody remembers freak shows, that would be when people who had certain disabilities or physical differences and things like that, they would be exhibited as entertainment just because they're different, which is gross. But it was seen, we're talking even as late as the 1950s and 60s.
Try 1977. I remember going to a carnival.
There was one at my state fair in 2010.
But what I was going to say is that the idea at that time was that you were doing these people a favor by taking them out and using them as entertainment, because, well, there's something wrong with them. They'll never be able to take care of themselves. Anyway, so it's the same kind of mentality. It's I've read story, because I find that whole thing fascinating from I also think serial killers are fascinating perspective, but I've read a fair bit about them, and there would be lots of times where, say, a child is born with like an extra leg or, you know, some sort of abnormality, and it was seen as, well, I'm going to be kind and benevolent and take that child and exhibit them so that somebody will give them money to feed them, kind of thing, even though they're exploited like their whole lives. Because once they get in on that level, oftentimes they would just be treated like they had no autonomy of their own, and people would, depending on what disability they may have had, people would say that they weren't capable of taking care of themselves, and some of these people were exploited their entire lives.
Elephant
but
Man.
but the people doing it would feel like they were doing them a favor.
Elephant Man's a perfect example.
Yep, James, is it James Merrick or?
Yeah, Merrick.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, well, even if you think about the mentality behind some of the old insane asylums, you know, it's like this idea, like, you know, Morgan said at the beginning, the savior complex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come
white
in
savior
and
complex.
Yeah, white savior. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, it's crazy because you can, as an individual, you can very easily lose your autonomy. I mean, when I you know, was at my worst with my bipolar, one of the things that I hated the most was not being able to work, not being able to be a productive member of society. And it was, I actually didn't start to get better until I could get back to work. So that was always my goal: get back to work, get back to work. Granted, it took me 18 months to 3 years, depending. I had kind of a spotty employment record for a while. But you can see that with going in and handing them the, you know, these little baskets of trinkets that's going to last them a day or two. That's not going to sustain them. That's not going to teach them how to take care of themselves. It's like, as a mental health patient, I literally had to learn what they call the activities of daily living all over again. I had to learn how to make my own food again. I had to learn how to shower and take care of my hygiene and well, my hair I shave off, so you know, all those, what we take for granted in our society, that's stuff we need to teach people how to do, how to farm, how to fish, you know.
And the thing is, some of these folks actually probably know some of that, but their resources have been depleted by, oh, guess who? And and so they don't have a soil that's conducive to farming anymore, or water's harder to come by. So it's not even necessarily teaching things like how to make food or grow food. It's, here's how to grow food in with the resources that you currently have, because how you may have learned to grow food doesn't work anymore because your land's been fucked up, or you've been forced to move somewhere that's completely different from your ancestors that you would know how to take care of that land. Like, there's so many things at play, and so many things that can cause like a lot of the places where there is famine and starving poor people, most of that is caused by governments who are too busy just trying to maintain power or gain power and fight this and that other country. They don't give a shit about their people. Their people are just somebody for them to rule over. They don't care.
Well, they strip the land of natural resources that are going to be needed to sustain the populations that they have.
Yeah.
And you know, when you keep taking and taking, I mean, it's going to sound kind of woo-ish, but if you take from Mother Earth, she's not going to give back to you. you got to take care of what you got. But some of the governments, and I know, in Africa there are some governments who, will send aid to, and it goes to the ruling parties. The people don't see any of it. So, of course, yeah, should we cut them off? Well, yeah, but some of that does trickle down. I mean, Puerto Rico was a perfect example. There were pallets, from my understanding, of water that never got distributed.
Yep. I've seen a picture of it, and it's like an entire runway full of pallets of water.
And people were literally having to break into these water sites that had been sealed because they were contaminated to get water. And so, yeah, FEMA really dropped the ball on that one. And they're American citizens. So,
and who could find a way to spoil water? Those fuckers.
FEMA.
Yeah. And they basically, because they left it sitting in the sun in the plastic bottles, and crap leached into the water because of the sun and whatnot. And it's not, I mean, they should just go in and get rid of it, because it's not safe. And yet if people are desperate, they're going to break in and try and drink that stuff.
Yeah, as a Mississippian, I don't have fond memories of FEMA from Katrina, but but yeah, it is. It's just, and then you saw even some of that with Katrina, particularly people going into these areas where people would consider, oh, I'm going to go into the ghetto and help, these people in New Orleans or whatever. But I mean, even then it was like, it's weird because I didn't see as much of that as I do with them going to Africa. And it brings up this meme that I saw that was posted where it was like, what did it say? Oh, it was talking about this caravan that everybody's freaking out about, even though they're miles away, and it's only going to be like probably 12 people when they get there, which I don't care if they're, 1,000, like we should do the right thing there. And it's bananas because people were like, oh, so y'all will go on these mission trips to Honduras, but you don't care about these people in the caravan. You're like keep them out. And so the point of the meme was saying you need to rethink what your priorities are when you're going on those mission trips. Like what's your real goal there? Because it seems like it's not to actually help those people, because you don't care about those people when they're trying to seek asylum and flee violence.
Yes.
I remember seeing that meme. I think it was yesterday, actually.
Yeah, I posted it yesterday.
Oh, that's probably why I saw it.
It's Morgan.
It's me.
But that's so disgusting to me, because if I'm in the mood to be a do-gooder and be a missionary, then I'll go to the country of my choice that I think is the coolest to help. And I'll give some time and energy to some poor people. But if they want to come directly to my country, hell no, I ain't helping those bastards, because they're probably bad people, like, fake President Doofus says.
Yeah, like his whole thing with, oh, they're members of MS-13. I'm like, oh, really? Y'all think that? Then why are y'all going to Honduras?
Yeah.
I'm just like,
if you think they're all a bunch of gang members, like.
Well, I think what baffles me, and it's something I've been trying to get a handle on for a couple years now, is that where does this bizarre mindset come from?
I think I have some ideas. So, one of them I think is just this whole, because if they're coming here and they're coming here to make their own lives and they're here to do these, make a life for themselves, all of a sudden it doesn't look so cool when I go there and help them and I can't tell them how to live anymore in exchange for them behaving a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they actually are able to lift themselves up out of poverty, or even just like make better lives for themselves, and they're not relying on Becky over there to to basically post her Instagram pictures, or not relying on her to come by there and, help build their school, then all of a sudden that white plex. And so it's like, and it also is, it is this racist idea. It's like where, okay, they can be over there and I can go over there and I can go over there and help them when I so choose. But if they come here where I live, no, they're different. That's weird. I don't want them in the same vicinity, because you can even see it in the way they take pictures of these people, right? They're like in the background. They don't have names. They don't have stories. They don't have any kind of context for like what they're doing there. It's just brown kids in the background. Oh, look at me, I'm such a good person.
And if they find, you know, a group of kids that they think are kind of cute, then they'll like pose with them. Be, look at me with all the cute poor children I'm helping.
Yeah, if you did that in America, like their mom would like come up there and like slap your ass. Like be like, why are you taking pictures of children, you weirdo? Like, yeah. Like that's the thing. And it's like, because they're not they have their own, like, they're able to get their own resources. And of course, you know, charities do exploit people here in America, and of course we do have awful conditions here. But the thing is, like, it is that sort of, it's racism really, is I think what it comes down to, this racism and mentality, that, and this xenophobia of, well, I don't want them in my neighborhood.
Yeah, well, it's okay if I go there and take pity on them and I give them my charity.
And then I get to go home. And then I get to go home and I don't have to think about them ever again. Right? And then
it comes down to one of Dub's favorite words, otherizing. We're otherizing those
and this
are
is
weaker than us.
Literally where I would imagine the term going slumming comes from.
Yes. Because you don't want to live in the slums. I just want to see and gawk at them and then retreat back into my, you know, my neighborhood of people that look like me. You know, it's, yeah. It's basically that whole, I think it's that kind of mentality that's what causes people to do that. But they will, of course, they'll deny it, is the thing. They'll deny it. And they'll be like, oh no, it's just because I don't want them taking our resources or whatever. But I think really deep down it comes down to that, because they're otherizing. Otherwise you wouldn't care if they were, you know, we gave them resources. Because you consider them not somebody that's not worthy of sharing resources with. And that's because they don't look like these white people, or they're not from America, or, you know, they speak a different language.
The otherizing is based on a perceived fault of some kind or another. I mean, I'm working on a piece right now concerning the poop cult. And, you know, basically, I mean, basically what you just said is what I wrote. I mean, it's like you know, Julian Appigli's perceived fault in people are mutations, and it gets a little deeper, and I go into it more in my blog post. But it's just like, it always comes down to the us versus them, and this otherizing, and in some regards, in some circles, it, like you said, it's based on racism. And, you know, some Christian identity movements, whether it's KKK or other white supremacist groups, you know, it's biblically based, or their interpretation of being biblically based. And that's what scares me about it, because when I like in the piece I'm working on now concerning Jillian, is that she does not espouse a, for lack of a better word, Christian worldview. She's all over the place. And so where is she getting this? It's the otherizing. But at the root of it is, you know, she perceives people as different. You know, and in her case, she has a Messiah complex, a very large one. But,
for sure.
You know, it's like, it's really scary to watch, you know, even somebody that portrays a kind of secular worldview would have something based in, you know, the you know, a Christian ideology of the serpent seed doctrine, which is a lot of what some Christian identity movements have at their base. And this goes back to the whole colonialization, you know, when America was first, you know, refound, or yeah, or even in India with Great Britain, what they did over in India or Africa.
Of course, converting people to Christianity is one of their main parts of colonialism.
It's this big old circle, and it's like it's really scary that you can have a secularly based government, or not one based within biblical law, but if you take it down to the right down to the root, there it is, other.
Yeah, and it's religious. It's sort of religious thinking, because I mean that is sort of the basis of all religions. It's the basis of a lot of these, ideologies. But yeah, it is very, it's frightening, and I'm seeing an increase in it. I mean, people becoming more and more. I'm seeing, or at least they feel more comfortable in espousing their views, because they feel as if it's acceptable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, I don't want to go too far off into a tangent, but this whole otherizing is becoming so acceptable, where, you had the shooting in Kroger's, race-based. You had the shooting at the synagogue, religiously, based otherizing, because they were Jewish. I mean, it's just, the woman at the apartment complex, that basically confronted two black women and said, what the fuck are you doing?
I was going to say, white woman at an apartment complex. Which one?
They're saying I'm hot and I'm white and I'm rich, and saying, what are they doing here? And
that's bitch. Oh my god,
got fired. She lost her $100,000 job.
I love that. She $25,000, and I'm like, not no more. You don't, bitch.
Yeah,
but then there was some woman who followed that poor man back to his apartment. Like, are you sure you live here? Prove to me you live here. And he's like, I don't have to fucking prove to you I live here.
Yeah, like, and it's stereotyping. It's like, no, you can't come into my neighborhood and live the way I live. I'm supposed to tell you how to live and gawk at you. And yeah, it's just when that narrative gets flipped, and that's when people freak the fuck out and act wild.
I recently just watched, I managed to find some All in the Family on YouTube recently. And the episode where the Jeffersons move into Archie Bunker's neighborhood is perfect, because he liked the Jefferson's son Lionel, who would come and bring him his dry cleaning and all of that. That was okay, because like, oh, he's a nice black boy, so it's okay. I'll allow him to come into my home, kind of thing. But when his parents moved next door, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't want them in my neighborhood. What the fuck?
Yeah, because it's like, well, and then again, it's like those same people, they'll tell themselves, I'm not racist, or I don't care about, what culture you're from, or this classic line, which I'm always like, yeah, this means you have some issues. Or like, I don't care if you're black, blue, or purple. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And so it's like, when these people, yeah, that's a telltale sign when they get like that line. I've always, yeah. So it again, it's that whole like, oh, that's fine that he comes by and he's kind of like a source of entertainment for me in a way. But then, like, how dare he try to live like me, and how dare he try to come into what I perceive as my space?
Because it was almost like he was treating him like a pet that he would allow to come in the house, kind of thing. And then, what? You want to live next to me? No.
We had a family when I still lived in town outside of Buffalo. This was back in the 70s, and upper middle class is where I lived, and we had a black family who the son I went to school with in high school and junior high, and they moved about a block away on a corner, and the stink that was raised that a black family was moving into a white neighborhood was palpable. And I sit here and I think about that, because the dad was, I might be confusing he was a university professor, and the mom was a lawyer. So these were not, you know, undereducated or in poverty or anything like that. I mean, they could afford the home that they purchased. But now I sit here and I see what's going on, and it scares me because it's like I'm sitting on the sidelines and it's like, what the fuck do I do? What can we do about this? I mean, yeah, we can sit here and, you know, bitch about, you know, how we see charities exploiting, and how if you take even secular charities, in some cases you take them down to the root cause. There's, you know, blah 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 blah. But what do we, as not even as atheists, but as individuals, what, you know, what do you think we can do about it? How do we stop this bullshit from happening besides getting Trump out of office and the rest of his administration? Because it's not just Trump. But I mean, how do we change this? How do we I mean, can we fix it? Can we change it?
I think we can if we just, you know, but I mean, again, it's like this whole rhetoric and just having conversations about it, I think is really a part of it, because I think a lot of people don't realize what they're doing because it is taught to us. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
because I mean, you think about going back to education, we're taught that, oh, well, we go to these countries and we help them. And we're not taught about these countries' histories and their cultures, or in ways how we exploited them. and
Exactly.
and then we're not taught that. We are taught that we just go in there and save them because they can't help themselves. And the thing is, if we can change that, then I think that would be a big step.
Like when we talk about, again, like the caravan, and everybody's going on, well, you know, it's not, they have a shithole country, blah blah blah. Why is that?
Yeah, I brought that up in a conversation yesterday, I think. Might have been Saturday.
Like, why
And when I told him, I said, well, do you realize that our foreign policy, meaning US, has in some cases caused the unrest that these people are fleeing?
That's right.
And they're like, what? I said, and I can't be specific because I'm really shitty when it comes to foreign policy. But I know some of the things that we have done down in South America and in Central America has, you know, caused issues. You know, and this is what, you know, what the people are fleeing.
Yeah.
And they're, and I'm like, seriously, go look it up. And they're like, they came back. Then I think it was yesterday that they came back and said, oh, I mean, that's a lot of people don't, or, you know, the whole thing with, you're talking about the caravan, and everybody's, you know, flipping out, people here. And I'm like, we're like 5,000 miles away, but they think they're already on the border. And I'm like, no, dude, they're about 2,000 miles away. I said, here's
they just made it to Mexico City, for fuck's sakes.
And these caravans happen all the time. They're just using it for the midterms. Like, these caravans happen all the time. And usually when they get there, it's like, I think one got there and it was like 12 of them. But they do this because there's safety in traveling in these large amounts of numbers, because the journey is very, very dangerous. And there are a lot of people that they take horrible advantage of these people because they're in desperate situations. Like, that's where you get things like human trafficking. That's where you get things like, you know, exploitation and all these kind of, and violence against these people and things like that. So if you travel in a large group, there's safety in numbers there.
Yeah.
And it's easier to travel that way because then you're not having to constantly watch, you know, your children all the time. You can, you know, have people take turns in doing that. Like, it's just like traveling. It's like, just like why anybody else would travel in a group. I mean, of course, you know, not to compare the situations, but it's there's safety in numbers, and it's an easier way to make the journey. But this whole, it's purely being used for midterms because the Republicans, they have no ideas that can win. So what they have to do is they have to scare people.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I mean, you know, the person I was talking to is the type that will look into things for, you know, for themselves. And what was funny is when I brought up about, you know, the caravan isn't anywhere near the border. I mean, and here, you know, initially he was talking about, oh yeah, they're getting ready to cross the border. And I said, you know, here's the border. Here's them. They're 2,000 miles away at the time we were talking. And he's like, what? I said, they're nowhere near the border. So he went home that night, looked it up, and he's like, holy shit, it's so much misinformation and disinformation and scaremongering, as you pointed out, Morgan, that I think, as you said, we have to have these conversations. And as much as I sometimes make an ass out of myself because, I say stupid shit. I mean, I'm human. And I'm still struggling with issues as far as, I was initially, for a long time, I was a one language only person. I am an isolationist. I won't say America first, but I'm very much an isolationist. I don't, so I'm trying to rectify that as I broaden, I hope, my worldview. It's not like I became an atheist and all this shit opened up for me. It's just like the white supremacists that are leaving the movement, they have to totally re-educate themselves. He's gotten so big.
I know. Sorry, I'm distracting everyone with the kitten. Say hi, Mr. Blood.
Hi, kitty.
I don't want to be here.
I don't know where my moose is. He's probably on the table.
Oh, poor buddy just did a face plant on the table. Don't do that.
But yeah, I think conversation at least
is one way to start. And then education, and I think that a lot of it is just introspection and sort of asking yourself, okay, why am I doing this? And then again, before you do these Instagram things, ask yourself, would I be okay if somebody did this if I were in that situation? And then providing, like, knowing their names, getting to know the people, and just being respectful, I feel like goes a long way. And making sure you're uplifting people instead of, telling them what to do and talking, so just that kind of thing.
Well, I think too, I don't think there's really an all-inclusive, easy solution that the government can put forth. I think it has to be done kind of in a piecemeal fashion, and banning Muslims or whatever is not the answer. Yeah, controlling is one thing, making sure they're properly vetted, which in my opinion, I do think we have a fairly decent vetting system. Unlike Europe, who, they do in some parts have a problem with illegal immigration and asylum seekers. They are land-based. We are basically, we are connected to Mexico and Canada, and I don't foresee any Canadians illegally entering this country and staying, at least not.
Well, there probably are few, probably more based on the fact that they're probably in a relationship with an American, but
or jobs.
Yeah,
there's a lot of illegal Canadians. There are actually a lot of like illegal Irish immigrants too.
Yeah,
nobody talks about that.
In Boston, the neighborhood I lived in was.
But actually, we have a problem with illegal Americans coming up here now.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, when you cross a border in Europe, you can literally walk from country to country if you have the stamina. Where you can't do that in the U.S. You got Mexico and Canada. If you want to walk all the way down to South America, that's your choice. So we don't have the same geographical issues that Europe has. So it would be, for lack of a better word, easier for us to control, who comes in and who comes out. That's not saying that we don't have issues, but to say, as some do, that ISIS is is flying to South America and then walking from South America or Central America up to the border to get into our country illegally.
I'm just like floored by that.
I'm like, that sounds like a lot more. Like, there are so many easier ways to go about that. Like, it is. I'm like, man, that would be I mean, if Yeah, but again, it's like, how can I scare people as much as possible? So, like, it's like they're carrying diseases. They got ISIS members and Middle Easterners because everybody's scared of brown people. So it's like, let me put as many scary brown people in there as I can. Like, I'm surprised they're not saying like Black Lives Matter supporters and Colin Kaepernick supporters are among them. And like, yeah,
you know, a rogue group of Antifa who stole an arms shipment is merging with them or something.
a bunch of abortion doctors are in there too.
Yeah,
and, like, and they're all gay.
Oh yeah, and a bunch of like trans people that want in your bathroom, and yeah.
What I find funny about this is like the past 3 weeks since I've been into the poop cult bullshit, I got to the point where I had to take a step back from the socio-political stuff because it was just like I wrapped my head around some of the rhetoric, like, ISIS coming to Venezuela or whatever, and then marching up. I just was like, are these individuals that believe this stuff or accept this stuff, as truth when it's blatantly obvious, or when we have, Trump saying, well, I didn't say that. It's on fucking tape.
The thing is, I think that part of it is, yes, there is a contingent of them who believe that. But I think for a large part of it is they almost believe it in bad faith because it gives them an excuse. It gives them an excuse to say, oh, well, we can't let them in because, they're an ISIS or they're an MS-13.
Yeah.
And, it gives them cover because that way they don't have to say, oh, I don't want them here because I'm racist. Because people still aren't at that level. There are certainly some now, but they are still, it's this idea that goes back to like this whole thing of the media even treating this way of it's much worse to be called a racist than to be a racist.
Yeah. Well, I find it funny with this is kind of a side note with the MS-13. Most people don't realize that MS-13 is actually a U.S. based gang. It's not based in Mexico. It is a purely U.S. gang, for lack of a better word. They infiltrated Mexico. Not the other way around. Yeah, from us.
But Mexico ain't like build a wall.
It's like, and that's what baffles me. And I didn't know. The only reason I know this is it was like a year or two ago, maybe someone said something, and so I did a little digging on MS-13. And here, if I remember correctly, I think it started in DC, or did it start in LA, or it's like, it was a purely U.S. creation, for lack of a better word. And it's like, but we have people now saying, well, MS-13 is going to infiltrate from Mexico I'm like, no, it's the other way.
Headquarters is here. Like they're already here.
They're already here.
This stems from this attitude of, my country's perfect. My country would never do anything bad or evil or whatever. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have used evil, but whatever. But my country would never, infiltrate some other country with gangbangers or anything else. So, yeah, and that's what it comes from.
Yeah, I just find the whole issue with doing the charity work and supporting other countries and the fear mongering and the immigration issue, and it's like it's all just getting all crammed into one and trying to discern a solution, from various angles. I mean, as I said, I don't think we can attack this from one way. No. It's like
that's how everything works. I mean, there's a holistic solution to it for, use holistic sounds kind of woo probably, but it's like the holistic approach to where you approach these problems from different angles.
Yeah. And it's like, that's the thing. I mean, to use an analogy of healing, you don't, go all into something. First step is you have for cancer or a cancer. You go first, have radiation to shrink the tumor. Okay, they got the tumor shrank. Now you can have surgery. Okay, and after surgery, you have to, you might have to take chemo. And the next step after chemo, depending on where, your cancer was, you might have to go to some type of rehab. And in the case of breast cancer, you might decide to have breast reconstruction. It's like you don't do it all at once. It's mind-boggling.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. It's like a box of just terrible things.
It's interesting because the Christian Children's Fund, because I did kind of look for it, because that's the one that was always in my face like my whole life on TV in Canada, and usually the same kind of creepy guy who was always cuddling children a lot more than I thought he should be. But there's a website we have here. It's called Charity Intelligence Canada that I came across, and it rates various charities with talking about their use of funds and where does it go and what's their financial transparency like and that sort of thing, their donor accountability. And one of the things it says here, because it gives like a blurb about Christian Children's Fund, it just says, founded in 1938, its mission is to help poor people across the world develop skills and resources to overcome poverty and pursue justice. What exactly that means, I'm not sure. But it says the charity works through local partners to better meet the needs of communities it supports. It funds communities in 6 countries: Ghana, India, Paraguay, Burkina Faso, Nicaragua, and Ethiopia. But the one it talks about that it focuses on health, nutrition, education, blah, blah, blah. But then it says their model is to work in a community for 15 years, after which the community, quote, graduates. But what does graduate from what? What does that mean? It's very nebulous sounding.
Yeah, like what does that mean?
And I went to like the actual Christian Children's Fund website, and it doesn't say anything. Like it just says, we focus on health and water and education and sustainable economic growth and strengthening community organizations. But it doesn't say anything about this 15-year thing and what they would graduate from. So and they got a B+ rating from the website. So they give like, what was it? We figured 70% of their intake goes directly to the charity, which isn't stellar, but isn't nearly as bad as some places. And so like it got a reasonable grade on this evaluation site, but to me that sounds awfully nebulous.
Yeah, and again, it's just, look at the way that those ads are portrayed. Again, it's like they're portraying this sort of like this tragedy porn, and instead look to charities that actually go work with people in the community and respect the culture and uplift them, instead of this whole like, oh, we have to go save them mentality. Like I think that's also a key. Just pay attention to sort of their rhetoric and how they advertise, for lack of a better word.
Like, okay, for instance, so they also have on the Christian Children's Fund website, and I'm going to share this just for fun. They have something called a gift catalog. So you can choose to give money directly for a specific thing, I guess. So they've got like, give money to a community well, or buy a cow, or whatever. But then there's like together at Christmas. Okay, so some of the countries, Yeah, like some of those countries that you were talking about, pretty sure they're not all Christians. So it says children in Central America often face violence in their community, leaving them unable to celebrate joyous occasions. But you're assuming the joyous occasion that they want to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
It says through training with parents and communities, your help will generate support for children so they can have a safe space to enjoy the Christmas season. Okay.
What if they're not Christian? Oh, we'll make them Christian first, then they can celebrate a joyous
Which, I
season.
mean, that's fine if that's what they want, but the thing is, like, I would like to see, like, I don't know, it's just from what you described about their advertising, where it's that, like, old white man just, like,
Yes.
bopping around the place, you know, and
yeah. Well, like, here, well, I've got the share up. That's the guy.
I have seen those ads.
Okay.
I don't know where or how or why.
He creeps me the fuck out.
Really?
Like, I never felt like every time I saw one of those commercials, like, and I would never ever watch all of one. It would come on, I'd be like, change the channel. And I would always be like, ew, I need a shower now. Like, I don't know, there's just something about him that I just thought was super creepy.
Can you go back to the screen that shows the different things you can quote? Just
yeah,
like some of it. Okay, scroll up. Like the community well, water. Okay, even the beekeeping kit. But then you have, those seem appropriate.
Yeah.
But, then you have, the Together at Christmas. Giving a dental hygiene kit and a female hygiene kit, especially in parts of Nigeria, is a good thing. What happens, like I said, what happens when they run out? Teach them how, and that's where I have the emergency medical fund. That sounds like something that might be relevant. But again, teach them to be their own doctors, send them to medical school, set up a scholarship fund.
Yeah.
Set up a scholarship fund or donate to a scholarship fund that trains.
So, like, there's one, what is this? Moringa miracle tree. What the hell? A fast growing, drought resisting. Oh, it's GMO, people. You don't want to give them that. Sarcasm. It packs a healthy punch. It's a drought resistant miracle tree. Its leaves provide 7 times more vitamin C than oranges and 4 times more calcium than milk. And those are.
And for people listening, Deb was being facetious about the GMO.
I said sarcasm, yes.
Oh, I didn't. There are some people that do go there and they're like, "Oh, you should not be using GMOs," and it's like, well, what we gotta use? Like, this works better. Like, what the fuck?
Well, it's the whole white bitch. The whole thing. In India with the golden rice.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are people that it's like you got children in India who are blind because they're not getting the proper vitamins A or C.
Yeah.
And they're going blind because of it, and they found a way through GMOs to produce what they call golden rice, and I believe they take the beta carotene from a carrot. I'm doing this by memory, and they have created a means to get it in rice, which is their most populous food. So this way they're getting the RDA of beta carotene to help their eyes. And you have Shiva, I can't think of her first name, who is a quote anti-GMO activist who has absolutely no training in science, who is like totally against it. So yeah.
Which is crazy because it's like, I'm pretty sure those people would rather eat than have some crazy person come over there and just be like, oh, well, here's how you need to be living and here's what you should be eating. And it's like, let them decide like for themselves. I'm sure they have like the intelligence to do so. It's just when you fear monger and when you, talk over them and do that, then you're scaring people.
And we said before, like, it gives the impression that these folks are sort of, mentally deficient or something.
Yeah, it is. Like, they're too dumb to decide for themselves that, hey, I would prefer to eat. Like, fuck you. Just, that's all I have to say about that.
That's the thing we're coming from, and not just in issues like this, but we're coming from a perspective of we know everything, in a sense that what we do is what you need to do. And in some cases, there might be things that we do as Western society that would be nice if they could do, but they can't because they're not a Western society. They're an agricultural rural society based in India. Just some of the things just is, and that's where like you were saying, Morgan, learn about their culture, learn about their society, learn about what's going to work for them. You can't just go in there with the savior complex and hand out the
way, before we finish for the night, I wanted to touch on the biggest sort of fake missionary scam out there, and Beth just mentioned India. The fucking Mother Teresa and her like, that is, what are they called, Sisters of Charity or some shit?
Yeah, Sisters of Charity.
That's like the biggest racket ever, like, in terms of fake missionary shit, and the most dangerous, because
wouldn't she withhold like pain medication from people because it brought them closer to God, and just awful. Like, that's awful.
Suffering is beautiful, and Jesus likes it. Yeah, that bitch was the poor, like, people always are like, oh, well, Stalin and Pol Pot, blah, blah, blah. She's right up there with them. I'm sorry. She's on par with those fuckers. In some ways worse, because she duped people into thinking that she cared about people.
Well, and the thing is, not just her specifically, but within the organization, the Sisters of Charities organization, there is a lot of it's coming to light now, is there's been abuse of nuns, there's been rape of nuns, there has been trafficking of children. And
we're selling babies, for fuck's sakes.
And their whole thing was basically the white savior complex. And there was an article I read, I'll say kind of biased, but one of the money quotes, so to speak, was basically, by selling these babies, we were giving them a better life, is what it came. It's like, you basically stole this child from a mother and father and sold it. And you think you're giving it a better life away from its biological parents. Now, in some cases, that may be true. But it should be their decision. You don't steal a child.
Yeah.
And, like you said, the whole pain, suffering, what was it?
Jesus likes suffering. It's beautiful. It brings you closer to God.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, if that's the case, then I'll stop taking my pain medication so I can walk. I'm dealing with this whole pain is healing bullshit with Epperly. And it's like, no, it's not. I'm sorry, when my ankle flares up, I put it back in the cast. In fact, I was walking around for the last 2 days with my cast on because my ankle flared. The one that I broke again.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, my ankle is not healing. It's getting worse by the day. I'm pretty sure that a woman who has a mass in her chest, breast cancer, and the tumor is growing and starting to create a cancerous lesion that is visible externally, I don't think that's healing. That's killing. So it's baffling, and yeah, she would withhold. I mean, the money they took.
Oh, she had millions and millions of dollars.
But yet they had no antibiotic, in some cases, no antibiotics, or very old. I mean,
I read a story of it was a couple, I don't know if they were like a together couple, but like a man and a woman who were doing, quote, missionary work, and they volunteered at one of the Sisters of Charity houses for the dying, and they were so appalled by what was going, and like I've actually seen they managed to smuggle video out of, and like people who were screaming in agony, like, so they would change the dress, say they had like a leg ulcer because they've got some illness and they're not healing, and maybe they are terminal, I don't know, but they would change the dressing, but they wouldn't give them any pain medication. And these people are like screaming because they've got gangrene or whatnot, and they're not getting any relief. And it was just unbelievable. Like I saw some of the video they shot where they're asking some of the nuns, like, well, what medication can we get for this person, because they're suffering horribly, and they're, oh well, we don't have anything, just just hold their hand and pray with them, kind of thing. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
Well, if people remember Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens did a essay on her, and he was quite scathing, and I'm trying to find, because I'm really bad with foreign names.
And I've also, there was another fellow from India.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find his name. I can't think. Arup Chatterjee.
That's right.
He's a London-based physician and author, and he wrote Mother Teresa, The Untold Story, which gives extensive evidence that the missionaries of charity ran inadequate facilities and offered little comfort to those they were trying to help.
Yeah.
He goes on, he found a cult of suffering in homes run by Mother Teresa's organization, with children tied to beds and little to no comfort for dying patients but aspirin. In addition, Dr. Chatterjee confirms Teresa allowed practices like the reuse of hypodermic needles in primitive facilities that required patients to defecate in front of one another. And yeah, so I'll try to remember to send posts in the group the links to Chatterjee stuff. He actually, if I remember correctly, has a blog outlining this. But yeah, Christopher Hitchens was pretty scathing in his his expose on her. And yeah, are you going to be able to prevent all suffering when somebody is in a terminal state or
but there's a lot that can be done to mitigate.
Yeah, but to mitigate, I mean, aspirin.
Yeah, that's not gonna.
Doesn't touch my pain. At the time before I went back on pain pills for my ankle, I was taking 32 Motrin a day.
Damn.
Just to function. And I said to my doctor, I said, this isn't working. And I said, because I have a history with pain pill abuse, I'm reluctant to go back on it because, depending on where I am mentally, I could get addicted again. So I'm very careful with how I take it, and I only take it at night. very rare do I take my medication during the day. And so I said, she's like, yeah, 32 pills a day is not good. So I take 1 pill a day, maybe 3-4 times a week at most, compared to 32 a day. You can mitigate those, for any, illness. I mean, they would have simple colds go into pneumonia because they weren't giving proper antibiotic. I mean, you can't give an antibiotic for a cold, but then, it hits pneumonia stage and they weren't being treated.
Yep. Well, I think that brings us to the end for this evening, ladies.
Shout out, shout out, shout out.
Oh yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there. It was kind of lively in the chat tonight. We had some trolls. Yes. In fact, I was just finishing up there a post. But anyway, yeah, so hi to Lexa, who's having lots of fun with the trolls over there. She said she's gonna have to re-listen to find out what we actually talked about because she was having too much fun, but that's okay. we don't mind. Somebody has to entertain the trolls, and I know Triss was trying there for a while, so I'm not sure if they're still up or not because I know they sometimes go to bed early. But
Morgan, be safe.
Yeah, Morgan's like,
yeah.
No,
the sirens just went off. There is a tornado forming in my area, so
maybe you'd like to. I don't know. Do you want to tell us where to find you, or just peel
off? Where to find you? Hopefully I don't fucking die. But so you can the Bi Skeptical podcast with Triss is on a hiatus right now, and so, but you can still find those episodes on iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Mostring. It's MOSTRING. Same username for Instagram. And you can find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer. And I'm going to run so I don't.
Well, just before you go, so you know, I was going to mention that we have a new patron this week, Free 15. Oh yeah, actually you did know that. Never mind. We talked about
still, yay!
Yay! We love our patrons. Go and find out if you have to jump in a basement somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a sign I do. I've gotten like 3 texts from my insurance company. And then
go.
Yeah, I'm going. Okay, yeah. So bye.
Bye. Be safe. Let us know you're safe.
Yes. All right, I'll let y'all know. All right.
Yes. But anyway, so yeah, thanks to Freethinker 215 who became our patron this week. We really appreciate it. And they seem to be quite a fan. So thank you. We appreciate the support and we're glad that you're enjoying the show very much. So Beth, where do we find you?
Easiest way is on Twitter, Dune998. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos, which I have been exclusively blogging about Jillian Epperly and her poop cult, and I am now working on post number 16. I have another 17 outlined. The ammunition she gives me is astounding, and basically last night, I believe it was, she basically say, unless you're Walter Cronkite type person or Jay Leno or I forgot who else she mentioned, don't ask me for an interview.
So in other words, she wants publicity on her.
It's basically all publicity, but what I've been doing is going through her second book, pulling out her non-claims, in her opinion, where she makes outlandish statements. Limbs. I'm not a starfish, thank you. I'm also not a tadpole. She did that on a Facebook post. The other day on a Facebook video, she said, you cannot OD on salt. Gee, that's funny.
Tell that somebody that got a stroke from it.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about stroke. I'm talking about people who literally get intoxicated via
Right.
salt. Yeah, she's a handful, and she's now has the privilege of being one of the most blogged about people. And the similarities to Carrie Rivera and MMS are astounding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for the last couple weeks, and I'm
Le-
actually having fun.
Lexa says, poop cult always amuses me. And then she says, I wonder what their holy rites would be. Plot bunnies and writers go go. Comedy gold is waiting.
Well, their holy text is her book. She's basically outright stated that, and she pushes her book pretty much every time she makes a post. And she will she's quote cracking down that if you haven't read my book, tried my protocol, I don't want to talk to you. She's actively booting people off her page, especially if you're vegan or vegetarian, even though the only animal protein in her quote diet is chicken and eggs.
Okay. What's her beef against vegetarian vegan people?
Uh, Basically, it's competition. That's what it boils down to.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's really it's quite interesting. Allegedly, she has a third book on the way. I will be getting that. That'll probably keep me busy for another year. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter, my blog. You can find me on Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge, and I do post links to my blog as far as what I blog about. So if you're interested in Jillian and
Sorry, Lexa just says in that case, does she get a funny hat like a giant conical turd rather than the Catholic funny hat?
well, she was wearing a mock pussy hat the other day.
Mock pussy hat. No, no, no. She needs a poop hat. They do exist, Lexa. I've seen them.
Yeah, they do exist, yeah. But yeah, I've been pretty much sticking to that, but I do post links to all my blog posts on Facebook and on Twitter and on Google Plus, but I don't really use Google Plus. It's kind of perplexing to me.
Well, it's going away anyway, so.
Oh. Well, yeah, great. But yeah, the more exposure we can get to her bullshit, the better before she really does kill somebody. I saw a video today of a woman who was on the protocol, as she calls it, for 52 days, and I thought I looked bad when I had my stroke. Holy hell, this woman looked like fucking death warmed over, but I found out that she's a scam artist as well. So, but yeah, spread the word.
Lexa's killing me here. She's like, poop hat, hail the sacred shit.
That's about it. Yeah. But yeah, you can find out about that. If you want to friend me, mention the show so I don't just ignore you, or if you got common friends. Yeah. I'm terrible at that. I'm horrible. I admit, but my page is public, so.
Girl, I got like 350 friend requests waiting that I haven't looked at.
Yeah, I had a influx last week of 3.
Well, the problem is, as soon as I start going through and accepting some people, then I get like exponentially more requests every day because Facebook keeps telling their friends of friends to friend me, and then I just.
I think too, in our defense, going both directions, you're a much more socially active than I am. I'm very much a nerd and stick to my blog. So, and because of what I do blog about, sometimes I have to be careful with, for lack of a better word, trolls. I actually had one call where I work. I get not a lot of hate mail, but I do get occasional. So I don't want my friends being exposed to that or having to deal with it. Kind of picky
Understandable.
about who I put on my friends with. So
Yeah, my shit's
Where
all
do we
public.
find you?
Oh, well, here next week at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. No more daylight savings time, thankfully. I wish they would get rid of that shit. But anyway. You can find me on Holy Crap the Vlogcast, which is Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. Also on the YouTubes, which is holycrapthevlogcast.com. As I say, I just did a talk for Central Ontario Humanists. I don't have the exact one because I had to take a bus to get there, so I couldn't bring my video equipment. But the original version is up on Atheists of Facebook channel also on the YouTubes. So if you're curious as to what that was, what I had to say, please pop over there and have a look. I believe I also put it up on my Heretic Woman channel. So if you find that easier to find, so not Beyond the Trailer Park, but my Heretic Woman channel, which I don't post very much there. In fact, you'll find cat videos. So Lexa, you may enjoy that. But feel free to pop over there and take a look if you're interested. And you can listen to me read the Quran, so you don't have to, over at www.fullquranic.com. And that's about it for now. So again, thank you to our new patron. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And yeah. And we will talk to everybody next week. And until then, the Humanist Creed will serenade you out.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.